Hello and welcome to the Leaders Council podcast, the podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. You join us on yet another sunny and rather warm day here in the capital. I'm Matthew O'Neill, and today, as always, we ensure that we have a variety of distinct perspectives on leadership. First, we're joined by Philip Dupée, a BAFTA-winning director and the managing director of video producer and photographer Hello Love. Philip, hello.
Hello, Matthew.
Thank you for coming on the program today. Now, normally, we'd head straight over to the field of leadership, but considering the ongoing COVID outbreak, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, how has this affected your operations?
Well, it's been quite dramatic, I must say. We literally, the last time I saw all my work colleagues was on Friday the 13th in March. We all left the office. We said we'd literally give it a trial run to work remotely, and we haven't seen each other since, and we've all been working remotely for the last 3 or 4 months.
And how has this impacted your ability to do business?
It's impacted it in terms of the fear that there's going to be no work going forward. But literally, work has been coming off. We've been finishing off projects, and we've been starting new projects that have come in through the door. So it's been good.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the challenges of leading a team externally, as we are seeing at the moment, are there any particular issues that are harder than others?
I think the main thing is to build a structure. The structure that we've built is that we talk at 9:30 every morning on a Zoom call. We all talk openly. If there's nothing to do that day, we agree there's nothing to do. But literally, since we've been in lockdown, we've been working every day on projects, and we've been communicating and delivering film remotely, which has been a bit of a challenge, which I could probably explain in another question.
Now, we should move on to the subject of leadership. I always like to start this part of the conversation off by asking the same simple question. What does the word leader mean to you?
Means to drive, driving your team and having your team behind you, I think, is to create an atmosphere around your team that we're all working together and we're all working for the same goal.
And when it comes to your day-to-day leadership style, what sort of form does that take? What's your model?
It's literally communicating with the team of people that I've got around me, directing them to work on projects, and we then literally, there's a lot of people involved in putting the film work together. So it's making sure that in each stage and each person that's driving the production of the film, that everybody knows what they're doing and delivers at the end of the day.
Now, let's go back to the beginning of your career, when you first started out your working life. Did you have any particular influences on you creatively or in a work ethic sort of molding way?
I just wanted to do art. I went to art college just literally wanting to do art. And then because I've got a passion for drawing and painting, and I know I can paint and draw, so I know I can achieve that. But literally, when I left art college, they said you should be a commercial artist. So I went into commercial art. I worked for a company called Robinson Lambinan. It left in 1979 art college and started in 1980. And then within 2 years, we got commissioned to design the Channel 4 logo and set up Channel 4 as a new TV company in the UK. And that was we won loads of awards for that. So that was a great start.
Now, of course, you have reached quite a lot of success within the industry. Tell us about your BAFTA win.
The BAFTA win was for a TV project that I got approached by ITV. And normally, at the time, I was shooting TV commercials for brands. And we got this brief to do something quite dramatic and different for a TV program. And I just literally, because it wasn't a brand that I was shooting for, it was an idea, program. I just pushed the envelope a bit and did this amazing piece of work. And what's amazing about getting a BAFTA, you don't enter it for the BAFTAs. It's your peers, it's the people within the organisations that see it and vote for it. And I won it.
Now, of course, that sort of success and encouragement is fantastic within the world of creative arts. and industries. What sort of lessons can typical businesses take from this sort of approach?
I think it's literally dedication. If you're dedicated to creating a film piece to tell a story, that's what is the background behind winning a BAFTA. And then the thing is, telling stories is what all brands want to do now. They don't want to advertise and sell things to people. They want people in their consumers to discover their brand and look at their stories, see how they're unfolding, what they're selling and producing, and get to the public that way. So telling stories and winning a BAFTA is very key to being successful today in the marketing business.
Now, marketing has changed quite a lot in the past decade, as you just alluded to. Where do you think the trends are moving in the next 10, 20 years?
The high street was dying even before COVID-19 and the lockdown. It was starting to change dramatically. And what has happened in this lockdown is it's just literally exploded 2 or 3 years forward. And now what we're seeing is brands realise that they've just got to sell their products online on their website. Their website is their biggest store. And literally the high street has suffered from that. And I'm just hoping that the high street still keeps going with other areas of business that are more local, where local people go and purchase things.
Well, that comes to a fantastic point for us to bring up, actually. Each week on the podcast, we have a specific topical question. And this week's question has to do exactly with that idea of physical presence. What role do you think the office will play in the future of work, both within your own organization and the wider world?
Matthew, I think it's going to dismantle the office regime, going and everybody travelling on public transport, going through hoops to get to the office for 9:30 to 10, sit there all day, making out they're busy and doing stuff, where literally you could do 5 things a day to be profitable and effective. You might as well just stay into your own environment, do those 5 things, achieve things, and move on from one day to the next. And I think that all the top tech brands who are dismantling their offices are going to sort of like literally force us to all review what we're doing.
And how would you say that this is going to affect commercial real estate?
I'd probably have big impact on it. I'd have thought. I mean, my landlord's the Queen. We are with the Crown Estates around Regent Street. We're based in Mayfair. And we're not going back at the moment, and nobody of my staff who I employ want to go back in the foreseeable future. So I have got an issue that I've got to address in terms of what are we going to do in the future.
Now, unfortunately, our time together is drawing to a close. But before I let you go, what does the next 12 months look like for Hello Love?
We're busy. We've got 2 brands that we work a lot for. One's a supermarket and one's a cookware brand. They both are doing a lot of marketing at this present time. And we've literally got a series of commercials we're shooting over the next couple of months. And there's one particular brand we're doing their current work for Christmas that they're rolling out at the moment. Going into 2021, I'm not sure. You never know what you're going to be doing, but at the moment, we're literally just driving and just trying to be creative and good at what we produce in film.
Well, Philip, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the program, and I do hope that you can come back on a bit later on when things get back to normal. Philip, thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. It's been a pleasure.
That was Philip Dupée, Managing Director of Hello Love. And now, if you haven't heard it before, is Jonathan White's exclusive interview with Sir Geoff Hurst.
We're now joined, though, by former England footballer and still the only man to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final, Sir Geoff Hurst. Thank you very much for coming on today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good afternoon.
And perhaps I should start and get it over and done with. I know you must be bored with it, and you've probably been asked 1,000 times. But when you got out for a duck playing for Essex, Geoff, what was going through your head at the time?
Well, of course, that's not one of the most asked questions I get. Oh, there are one or two people who are very familiar who do Google me, realise that I did score nothing for Essex. My only game for Essex first team when we played against Lancashire in Liverpool, a place called Egbert in Liverpool, many years ago, 1962, I think that was. So I didn't. I didn't really feel it at the time. It was lucky to be playing. I guess there were one or two injuries, but the problem that I had was really messing about between the two sports. That was very detrimental to me over that period of time, being stuck between the two sports.
And I think for those that don't know, there's another world that might exist where Sir Geoff Hurst was a first-class cricketer and not perhaps a footballer. But whether it's business or cricket or football, obviously the importance of leadership, it can't be understated, no matter what form that comes in. When you were at West Ham, Geoff, and when Ron Greenwood first came along, he made obviously some pretty radical changes. Was this a man that genuinely inspired confidence the first time you'd meet him?
Absolutely. I mean, he was simply a fantastic coach or teacher, if you like, of football. And the quite always mentioned when we talk about Ron Greenwood, Harry Redknapp, who was played under him and has been very successful as a player and the manager over many years. He's come across many coaches, of course, and managers during his time over years, I guess. He would still say that Ron Greenwood is the best coach he'd worked with. So you're very fortunate. I think you think you're lucky when you come across, if you have a great teacher at school and a great coach as we had in Ron Greenwood, and of course a great manager in Sir Alf Ramsey. So to come across people like that of that calibre can have a huge influence on your career, of course, and then your life, and that's quite purely the case.
Absolutely. And in those early days at West Ham, with a manager like Ron there, it's also important to have confidence with your other players, and of course they become your friends. Who did you look at the time when to inspire confidence in yourself? Was it Peters?
I think probably. Well, I was very fortunate to play with the calibre of the players I did. Again, extremely fortunate to play with the captain of England and West Ham and Martin Peters, who was a fantastic player. And as far as Martin's concerned, I think sometimes he didn't quite get the recognition he deserved and what a wonderful player he was. In terms of inspiring confidence, I always probably say that the biggest influence for me, I guess, would be the captain, Bob Noor. Although he was only about 8 months older than me, he graduated through the system probably 3 or 4 years earlier. He played for England in 62, 4 years before the final when I played. And so he was more, looked upon him more as a senior player, if you like, not as a guy with the same age group as me. And I looked at how he trained, how he acted, how he behaved, and how he played. And so he would say, I would also say he was a big influence on me. One thing I would say about leadership, I do understand clearly in all walks of life, leadership is at the top, is absolutely vital for a business, a football team, in any walk of life to be successful. And it's quite evident. I was in the motor trade for a long time as well, selling car warranties to car dealerships. And you could almost tell when you walked into the business, many of the car dealerships, you could almost tell from the moment you walked in by initial reaction, people came and welcomed you, that the business was well run or conversely not well run at all. And so I understand the value and quality of leadership. And that's why I'm very fortunate to be involved in my career in those early days with two great leaders in Ron Greenwood and Alf Ramsey.
Absolutely. And since you've already brought him up, Geoff, I think it'd be remiss not to go a little bit further with that. But obviously, after at West Ham, your playing came to the attention of Sir Alf Ramsey. Now, there's a man I'm sure when you walked into a room, you knew who was in charge. When it came to managing that England team, what was his style like, Geoff?
Well, the first thing I say about Alf Ramsey, he's probably over my life the most powerful influence who had on me as a person. Naturally, it happens to an extent because he's got your whole career in his hand. Whether he picks you for England or he doesn't pick you, it can have a great impact on your career and, of course, your life. But in that era I was involved for 6 or 7 years, it was quite clear who was the boss. He was quite very, very strict. Probably at the time, maybe overly strict, but at the time you probably wouldn't necessarily get away with it in today's football because it's changed dramatically in how you deal with players then and players now. But he was the most powerful man I came across, and very few people. And he was quite ruthless in getting people out who didn't want to be part of a group, part of a team. It is important that if you've got a group of people, and that's in any walk of life, they're all singing off the same hymn sheet, and you don't have anybody that's griping or moaning about the system. And if you've got people like that in your organisation, one thing I have learned, and I've taken it on in my life, my family, you've got somebody in the group that doesn't want to be part of it, you get them out. And Alf, I think, was quite ruthless of that in his staff. And I think that's one of the most serious things I think I've learnt over a long period of time.
And is there, do you think, a specific moment, I'm sure there's probably dozens, but is there a specific moment, Jeff, you could perhaps pick right now that did show those qualities in Sir Alf so sharply?
Yes, I think for me, certainly, I think there are instances of players who you thought would be in the team or certainly in the squad, and surprising they were not. There was no necessary reason for it, but looking back, I do think perhaps they were people that Alf didn't think wanted to be part of a group. So that's for me. In terms of my personal view, I think that it looked prior to the World Cup that I was going to be playing in it. Only a few games before I was playing, and I played with Jimmy Greaves in a game against Yugoslavia only a couple of months before the final. And it looked at that stage as if I was going to be playing in the team. But in a couple of more friendly games before the final in Poland and Norway, I think, and Denmark, I played 2 of the 4 games, and I probably didn't quite replicate my form that I'd been showing at West Ham and in the early couple of games for England. And he left me out in the first game of the World Cup against Uruguay. He started off with Jimmy Greaves and Roger Hunt. So I had an impact of thinking at that stage I looked like I was going to play, and didn't start because of just a lack of form. I didn't play quite well enough to justify my position. And somewhat fortuitously, I only got back in the team because of a nasty gash to shin on Jimmy Greaves' leg.
And I think what you've said there, Jeff, actually does sum that up really well. And more than that, whilst it's important to have that someone in charge with those qualities, it's almost useless if there isn't a strong and unified team behind them. And there really must have been moments, maybe there weren't, but let us know, in that 66 competition, the prolonged pressure on all of you, the weight of a nation, did it get to you?
Oh, not for me personally, no. I think, and I don't, not for me, not for a second. I think I was just happy to be involved in the squad initially. Not at all. You're not aware of the magnitude of the occasion, really, looking back out. So I never really felt, people talk about pressure a lot and it's there, and players talk about it in life. I didn't really necessarily feel any great pressure during the time I was there. And what is also important to say about Alf Ramsey, the people he left behind that were left in the squad after he'd moved 1 or 2 players out, the squad were a bunch of very hard-nosed, professional, top-quality people. And that was, again, the leadership that Al showed. He got people in together that were very, very strong personally. And I think that was part of the success we had. We were I always describe our group as hard-nosed professionals. We have some great players, but overall they were great hard-nosed professional players. And great quality people who we've kept in contact with, over the years.
And Jeff, I've got to ask, and I'm not making this up, I've genuinely heard that people do ask you whether or not you realised there were people on the pitch at that moment, I imagine you were busy on something else.
Well, I did some theatre shows last year. They've gone fairly well, and we're going to do a series of theatre shows, in fact, starting this week, over the next 2 or 3 months. And at the end of the theatre shows, we have about 20 minutes where we allow the people in the audience to ask questions. And I won't mention both. They're too long to talk about both questions. The other one's a really stupid one. It's too long for me to tell you. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the other ridiculous question I get asked, did I realise there were people on the pitch? And, of course, I jokingly say, yes, I was just about to shoot to score the goal. And I looked round, put my foot on the ball, and looked round for a little while and said, oh, dear, there are 6 or 7 people running on the pitch. So I've been asked that once at one of the theatre shows. So I make a joke about that and saying, yes, I put my foot on the ball and waited to just have a glance round, you know.
Maybe it does prove there are things such as stupid questions, really.
Oh, yeah, there certainly are. I've got another one which I won't bore you with. It's too long to tell you. I was in a Jersey, or Channel Line, Jersey or Guernsey, 2 or 3 years ago, and most stupid, irrelevant questions, absolutely nothing to do with football whatsoever, which was absolutely, but I can use that now because it is quite funny.
Well, maybe another time then, but we...
well, you want me? I can tell you if you want. You got time? I can tell you if you want.
Jeff, go on. Go. I think it would be silly if I said no at this point.
Okay, so I was doing at a dinner in the Channel Lines, 300 or 400 people, black tie dinner, guest of honour. And this occasion, I was speaking for about 20 minutes, then allowing questions from the audience at the end of the evening. And there was the usual football questions, and then all of a sudden I heard somebody at the back who asked a question. I didn't quite hear what he said. He didn't have the microphone with him, so I said, I didn't hear what he said. Can you please give this chap the microphone so I can hear clearly what he said? So the chap had the mic, and he said, when a turtle loses its shell, is it naked or is it homeless?
Right. What a question. What a question.
I think that would be definitely in the stupid category, wouldn't it? So we had a laugh about that.
You've got to have a patient of a saint, I think, sometimes to put up with things like that. But then again,
I found it amusing. I just found it amusing. In fact, some of the audience found it highly amusing as well. So it did make me laugh that day.
If you can put up with my questions, you can probably put up with anything. But there would have become a point, though, Jeff, I think you were a young man when obviously this happened, when you must have realised that teammates, began looking at you for leadership. Is that something that occurred to you, or did you just realise that by one way or the other, people actually begin to look up for you for inspiration?
Well, possibly. That's never really struck me until you've actually mentioned it now, quite frankly. It's a new question. Does anybody look up to me? I'm sure perhaps there are people who pay you compliments of fans of West Ham and Stoke, and of course England fans who I think probably it would be very immodest of me to suggest that I felt that somebody was looking to me for inspiration.
You don't have to, but I will.
Well, it's okay for a third party to do it. Perhaps that may have been the case over the years. People look at you and maybe it has a helpful effect. But I do think you how you behave and set examples on and off the pitches, people must realise that has an influence. How you react and behave to situations on and off the field surely probably has an impact to younger players coming into the team latterly. Yeah.
And with that, looking at football today, is there anybody that you think particularly on the field or the sidelines that strikes you as someone with those qualities that you could identify in a natural leader?
Well, current players, you mean?
Oh, players, managers, anybody that you look to today, really?
Well, I think some of the outstanding. I think the best example about a leader and at the moment is Klopp at Liverpool. He has been absolutely fantastic to acquire the players and get them to. Their attitude is absolutely fantastic. They're great players, but there's more than just being good players in football. It is need to have a good player with a fantastic attitude, and their willingness to work for each other and the team is absolutely outstanding. Hence these unbelievable results. There are, and the great players not always succeed as individuals, or probably even certainly as a team if you haven't got the right attitude alongside it. And they're probably, and that comes through the leadership. That's not just luck. That's absolutely leadership. He'd be the best example, of course, in football terms today, easily. And of course, but going back not that long ago, Alex Ferguson, who's just absolutely. You've got to take him as the first example, because Klopp's only done this over a period of time, a short period of time. But if you look at the 26, 27 years that Alex Ferguson did with Manchester United, and subsequently since he's gone, how they are not doing so well. He's the best example of management we've probably ever seen, and I don't think anybody will see the like of that kind of leadership again. It's absolutely astonishing.
And do you think, could you imagine Sir Alf or even Ron Greenwood managing teams today?
Yes, I think so. I think, yes, no question at all. I think Ron Greenwood, the answer, straightforward answer is yes.
Good answer.
The straightforward answer is yes. I can elaborate as much as you want, but the straight answer is absolutely categorically yes.
And with, and I know if we could talk about this probably for the next hour or so, but I'm conscious of the time. Looking back through your playing career, perhaps especially your time for England, who was it that struck you more than anyone else on the pitch that displayed qualities of not just leadership but companionship and level-headedness that you think that have stuck with you all these years later?
Well, I think I was very fortunate, and I wouldn't pick any one player out. I think looking at that,
so many,
and that's why we were successful, because we had so many showing all those qualities that you just mentioned throughout the team. I think that was outstanding, and it's an opportunity to talk about all of them in that breath. And there was nobody. And going back from an earlier question for me, all hard-nosed professionals, good teammates, good socially, and that's why we kept in touch with each other on our golf days every year up until about 5 years ago. Of course, with the sadly dwindling numbers, we still got on. Our wives got on all together all those years later. It didn't just finish after '66. That reunion, that camaraderie, that team spirit, getting on with each other lasted for a long time. And I wouldn't, when you put those questions and how you categorise those, I would pick every one of the 11 players who you put in that category that were like that. There was nobody else. They were all outstanding. And I think that was a big part. I can't stress how big a part that was. And I've said that many, many times, for the success of the team. We have some great players. We have some great players, of course. But without the attitude alongside that, going back to an earlier question, we wouldn't have been as ultimately as successful.
Exactly. Without that, the whole will never be greater than the sum of its parts. But with it,
yes, the word is team. The word is team.
Absolutely.
And I always use the word team when I talk. Sometimes together, everyone achieves more, and that's the same in any walk of life. That's fundamental.
And lastly, Jeff, looking if you were to give advice, and whether this is in sport or business or indeed any other walk of life, what would you identify, if you can, as the key tenet that you can't go without in terms of leading a team, no matter what that team is?
Single-mindedness, dedication, dedication to the job, thinking about that role, that job in leadership all the time. It's a huge part of your life. I don't think you can switch off when you're in business at the top level or sport at the top level. You may, have a couple of weeks holiday, but I'm even sure if these top managers and leaders in all walks of life are away on holiday on a beach somewhere warm, I'm sure they will not switch off for 2 weeks and completely not think about their role as the boss of an organisation. And I think you're completely focused. You're always thinking about things, thinking about improvements, and it's just dedication and tuning your life to being successful.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, on that point, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Very good nice to have a talk about this and just go over the past and just refresh my own memory about the quality of the players I grew up with.
Excellent. Another time, it would be great to talk again.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
This has been the Leaders Council podcast. Thank you for celebrating excellence in leadership with us. I have been your host, Matthew O'Neill. Until next time, goodbye. Thank you for listening to our podcast. The views expressed within the podcast do not reflect the views of the Leaders Council of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, its parent company or subsidiaries, members of staff, other guests, or any other person therein associated.